you guys are going to be passing the 6th grade. So I still have.
Let me mute myself.
So, I still have several who have not even looked at it. So I have no score for you. Bummer. Bummer. But I do want to move on because I want to give you some little mini lessons today and Monday and Tuesday about your vocabulary words, because these vocabulary words are going to be very important over the next couple of months, actually. But I figure if I give you a heads up, at least you'll know what we're talking about. I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. All right. The first vocabulary word for today and the scenarios I'm going to give you have to do with a variable. Okay, a variable. So today's lesson is all about variables. Now, here's an example of a variable. I'm just going to grab a bunch of pens here and say, hey, I have some number of pens and 2 of them ran out of ink. Now I have this many pens that work, okay? So I don't know how many pens I grabbed. I just grabbed a handful of them. Obviously, there's plenty, but that number, whatever number I grabbed, you can use letters to represent that number. And I will show you, let me go to my whiteboard so I can actually write down some things and share with you. There it is. All right, a variable, there you go. Variable is something that changes. It's not consistent. And a variable in math is a letter or symbol that represents, I'll just keep it at a letter that represents an unknown quantity. Okay, a letter that represents an unknown quantity. Okay, an unknown amount. All right, now let me give you another scenario. Let's say, so yeah, if I didn't know how many pens I grabbed, I could say I grabbed X number of pens and 2 of them ran out of ink. This is how I could write a mathematical expression just to represent some number that I didn't know in the first place, but 2 of them ran out of ink. So that would be an example of an expression using a variable. All right, I'm going to tell a few stories today, and just bear with me here. Let's say minimum wage in California, what is it, $13 an hour, minimum wage? I think so. Minimum wage is $13 an hour, okay? Let's say that you get a job as a waiter or waitress, and you're going to work during 1 hour, but you get minimum wage plus tips, okay? So you get minimum wage plus tips. Let's say minimum wage is that's how many hours you're going to work, okay? And then you also get tips. Let's just say you work 1 hour, just to keep things simple for right now. For 1 hour, you automatically earn $13, okay? So 1 hour plus tips. Let's say that you work the really busy lunch hour, okay? Lunch hour is really busy. So you earn that $13 for working lunch hour. And let's say that during that lunch hour, you actually got $30 worth of tips because you served a lot of people and they tipped you well, okay? So this would mean that you would get $43 for that hour, okay? However, what if you're kind of in like the middle of the day, okay, midday, and it's not so busy because everyone's back at work, so it's a very slow hour. And let's say during this hour, you get your $13, but you only serve like 1 person and you only earn $5 for that tip, okay? So that means you would make $18 for that hour. So the tips here is the variable. This changes based on when you work or how much money you get from your tips. This is the unknown. You can't depend on this. You just know it's going to happen at some point. And so in math, we use shortcuts and abbreviations whenever we can. So if I were to say you could get $13 plus tips, tips, and again, using abbreviations, usually we just use a letter, one letter to represent that whole word of what we're talking about. So we're going to say 13 plus the letter T for tips. Okay, so this T is the variable. That means it changes based on the situation. Okay, so this is why we use letters to represent numbers sometimes. Okay, I'll give you a couple more scenarios. Let's do another one, because it's not always addition, and of course there are variables for different situations like multiplication, division, subtraction. There's variables in all different types of math, and we will eventually be solving for variables, and we'll actually solve for a few variables today just to get the hang of it. How about a multiplication variable? Let's say you like comic books or graphic novels, okay? Comic books. We'll say that we sell comic books, go into the store, and the comic books cost $4 each, okay? Or graphic novels, however you call it. I don't know what, when I was, yeah, we would always call them comic books when I was younger. So I'm gonna stick with that. Comic books, $4 each. And let's say you bought one comic book. How much money would you spend? $4, of course. 2 comic books, how much money would you spend? Yes, thank you. I got a couple people typing in the chat. Appreciate that. $8, of course. Yes. How about 3 comic books? Let's keep going. Just a little bit. Okay, yes, $12, of course. Now, what if I just grabbed a box of comic books and I don't know how many comic books are in there? I'm going to say there's some number of comic books. How much money would I spend? Well, no, not necessarily. It's a whole box now. Let's say there's more than 4. And so, yes, I see the pattern that's developing. But if you don't know how many comic books you have, you would actually write this expression as I have $4 times however many comic books I have. So 4 times some number. Okay, here it was easy because it was 4 times 1, and here was 4 times 2, and here was 4 times 3. So whatever the number is, however many you bought, and you didn't even count them up, you're just like, oh, here's the whole series. I'm going to spend $4 for every book that I bought in that series. That whole box is $4 each. So you would write it as 4 times n. And just to let you know, in algebra, pre-algebra here, there are 3 different ways to write a multiplication problem with a variable. Okay, there's 4 times n. There's 4 with a dot n, because once we start using variables and letters, sometimes people will mistake the x for a letter instead of a multiplication sign. So you can replace the x with a dot, and the dot means multiply. Or kind of like what we learned in our order of operations, you can put the 4 right next to the n, and if there's 2 things that are touching and nothing in between, it also automatically means multiply. Okay, so there's 3 different ways you can write multiplication problems. You can put the times in the middle, but we're going to start getting away from that a little bit more when you were using variables, so you don't mistake the x for multiplication or the multiplication for an x. You put the dots, you'll see a dots for multiplication, and you'll see these 2 items right next to each other, a number and a letter next to each other. The number and the variable means multiply. So I don't have an answer. I don't have a number answer for this. If I buy n number of books, it's not necessarily going to be $16. It's going to be however many books I have in the box. And of course, you would have to count that up before you could pay for it. But 4 times however many number of books in the box, okay? So there are a couple of ways to write variables and expressions with variables, okay, mathematical expressions. I'm going to also share with you a couple of problems that use variables. And this is, again, pre-algebraic thinking. There are problems written like this. If it says I have 6 plus x, and then over on the side, it'll say if x equals 3, then what's the answer to 6 plus x? 6 plus some number, if x equals 3, you're just replacing that 3 for that x, and then of course your answer would be 9. Very good. All right, because you're going to see problems like this today. It's just practicing, right? Practicing filling in variables, and it's actually going to give you what the variable stands for. Okay, so we're just going to plug that in, and this is pre-algebra. Now let's kind of continue one that we started with. What if you had $4 for a number of books, and if you bought 10, if n equals 10, n equals 10, there you go. How many books would you actually, how much would you actually be paying? Yeah, there you go, 40, yes, because remember, this is multiplication. Even though it doesn't have anything in between, this automatically means multiply. And yes, you would get 40 here. Good job. You guys are picking it up quickly. It's fantastic. All right, let me give you a few more because this is kind of fun. I don't know. I think this kind of math is fun. Some people see letters in their math problems and they start freaking out, and that's okay too. We'll work through it together. What if I grabbed 20 pens in the beginning? Remember, I grabbed all those pens. What if I grabbed 20 of them and Q number, I don't know, I'm just picking random letters, ran out of ink. And then I realized that Q is 2. How many pens do I have that are still working? Yes, of course. Of course. Wait, what? Oh, yeah, 18 would be working because you're just replacing the 2 for the Q. Now, it's kind of fun, and I don't know if you want to, maybe we have a little time to do this. I like to make up word problems to these kind of situations in my head just because I don't know. I like, if I put a word problem to it, it kind of works it out in my head. I work it out better. Let's see, let's start with the problem. Here we go. C minus 5 if C equals 13. If C equals 13. All right. What would it be? Yes. Final answer, of course, is 8. Good, because you're just replacing that variable with a number. So 13 minus 5. Now I'm going to ask you a different question just to see if you can get creative, and you can just put this in the chat. You can get creative with it. Can you write a word problem? Can you make up your own word problem that might represent this problem, C minus 5? Yes? Okay, write one. Do it. Put just a little quick word problem in the chat that would be equivalent, that would make us write C minus 5. I've given you a few examples, like the number of pens that I grabbed, -2, or whatever. Okay, let's see if you can, I'm just going to give you a minute and see if you can think of a word problem for that situation. C minus 5. Oh, Rosie, you gave me a math problem, but I'm wondering about a word problem. Ah, there you go. If there's so many boxes in a store, someone grabs 5 of them, how many boxes are left? There you go. You got the hang of it. Bob had a card collection, and yes, he had a card collection and lost 5. Very good. See, there you go. Now you're coming up with a situation or a story that can plug in for this mathematical expression. I love it. I grabbed cookies, some cookies, and I ate 5. I love it. All right. I love it. See, and you don't have to have a specific number to start with, but yes, I love that one. That one's fun. Oh, Larry had a number of workers for him and he fires 5 of them. How many are left? Woo, must be slacking on the job. All right, there you go. Now you're getting the hang of it. Just to put this into perspective, like I said, I like kind of making up stories to go with these numbers sometimes to make them make more sense. All right, let's do a few more together. And then, yes, I'm going to give you a little tiny practice on Khan Academy of just solving some of these problems. How about this one? 30 divided by S. Okay, 30 divided by S. First, give me a situation when I would have to figure out, I don't know, I have 30 of something and I need to divide it. See if you can give me a story situation here. And for division, division. Oh, Bob's car wash needed to wash 30 cars and he divided his work amongst his workers. Oh, however many workers he has. That's right. That's a good one. Let's say he has 5 workers. If S equals 5, he has 5 workers. Then how many cars does each one have to do? Yeah, then each one would have to have 6. Each worker would wash 6 cars. I love it. Oh, I have 30 cookies and I need to split them with my brother. I love it. All right, you guys are having fun with it now. Now I get it. Oh, I teach driving school and have 30 students. How many crash me? And no, I'm kidding. All right, I love it. Let's see. What if? Here's a different kind of problem. 2D, okay, remember that means multiply, plus 3. Oh, maybe this is kind of like the tips one where you work for 2 days and you get a $3 bonus or something. 2 times D plus 3. And I'm just going to tell you, what if D equals 8? Oh, okay, all right. Yep, what if D stands for 8? And then how would you solve this one? Oh, there you go. All right, there you go. Perfect, yes. 2 times D, which means 2 times 8, is 16, and then plus the 3 is 19. That's using a little bit of your order of operations that we learned back in the beginning of the school year. You have to do your multiplication before you can add. So make sure you multiply before you add. And yes, the answer is 19. Very good. I'm going to give you 2 more just to see if you are really hanging here with me. All right, we don't have to make up any more stories about it. Let's just solve these last 2 so we can move on to some Khan Academy. How about 4 minus 2F if F equals 1? Yes, there you go. Good job. Bryce, check again. Kindlein, check again. All righty, there you go. If F equals 1, you're replacing a 1 for the F, and you're saying 2, don't forget, 2F means 2 times F, or 2 times 1. And if you have 4 minus 2 times 1, you have to do your multiplication first, and then you can take 4 minus 2, which is 2. Yes, everyone else that typed in the answers got it right. All right, last one, just to see if I can stump anybody. Yeah, you guys are really doing really well on this one, and I'm very proud. About the letter B for brag, over 2, and I'm doing the over on purpose to see if you remember what this line means. If B for brag equals 14. Ah, I cannot fool you. Yes, absolutely. You guys got the answers coming in so fast. You're absolutely right. If you plug in 14 for the B, so plug in 14 here for B instead. There you go. And this line, I just want to see if you remember what this line means. This line means divide. So 14 divided by 2 is 7, and then 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, you guys have got it, and you still make enough stories with all my problems. That's even more fun. I'm gonna have to go back and read some more of those. Those are very clever. You guys are very clever and creative. Okay, I am going to assign a quick little practice about variables. Uh-oh. Yes, there you go. The variables are assigned. There you go. Okay, variables are assigned. And just go ahead and repeat back. You go ahead and type it in. What is a variable? What is a variable in math? That is one of your vocab words. Make sure you put that in your vocabulary for math. And now you have some examples, some situations of why we might use variables. A variable is not a factor. No. Yes, thank you, Raya. That's good. A letter that represents an unknown number. Right, Joseph, an unknown number represented by a letter. Right, Aubrey, a letter that represents a number. Alyssa, yes, a letter, and you want to make sure that it does express or represent a number. All righty. Let me pop back over here. You do have 10 minutes to work on this assignment. And then you have a 10-minute break. So that leads us up to 9:20 when we start writing.
So thank you, Ms. Sprague. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here. So I just want to take a look, just do a quick review of sort of what we're doing. I want us to continue working on the holiday narrative, which we will here in just a moment. But I'm going to read through a previous essay, one from another class, and then we'll, excuse me. Take a look at this here. Okay, so this is what we've got. Lost at SeaWorld. So this is from the autobiographical incident essay that was done a while back. So author's name is not important, but the author of this essay, you know who you are. So yeah, feedback, but the feedback would apply not just to you, but to everybody as well. So I'll go ahead and read through it. And then we'll, excuse me, we'll analyze it for structure. We'll take a look and see what's working, what we can improve on, and then we'll get cracking on our own essays here in just a minute. So summer of 2018 or 2017 at SeaWorld wasn't the best trip of my life, but it taught me a lesson I would have never thought about. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and every year, since my dad is a veteran, SeaWorld gave us free tickets to go to SeaWorld in San Diego, California. SeaWorld is a beautiful theme park to visit because it has so many rides, attractions, animals, and much more. Me and my family would drive about an hour and a half to get to SeaWorld. I think that should be though, even though it seemed to take a while, it was worth it. Once we got there, we would eat lunch, then go into the park. Oh man, sorry, I thought I was gonna have to sneeze. I'm a mess. Me and my family would drive about an hour and a half to get to SeaWorld, even though it seemed to take a while. It was worth it. Once we got there, we would eat lunch, then go into the park. We would go on cool rides and see many amazing animals like dolphins, sea lions, penguins, sharks, etc. There are also animal shows that include real live animals. After me and my family saw a show with dolphins, we sat down at a bench and ate a quick snack. Then, while we were walking, I got distracted looking at a store with dolphin souvenirs. Then I noticed that my parents and my little brother were gone. I started to panic and started to cry. After crying for about 5 seconds, my dad grabbed me by the hand and said, "Bethany, pay attention or you'll get lost." I was relieved to know that my parents are always there for me and never leave my side. From this experience, I've learned to make sure that you're aware with your personal surroundings and stay alongside your parents or guardians. If you ever get lost, find a first responder that can help you, or if you have a phone, call your parents, tell them where you are. Okay, very cool. So what I want you to do right now is I'm going to leave this up real quick. And in the chat, I want you to write something that you think this author did well and one area that that she could improve. Okay, so one thing that this author did well and one area that she can improve. I'll give you about 3 minutes to do that. Okay, and then just go ahead and type your comments. One thing that's working well, one area for improvement. Go ahead and type those in the chat, and there'll be about 3 minutes. So go ahead and type your feedback in the chat. Okay, so some feedback has been coming in. So much of it I agree with. Yeah, the structure is there. You know, we're talking about feelings. We're talking about some things, but a little bit off topic. No, I think everything that she's talking about relates to what was going on. I like how she describes everything around her. Yep. I would say, let's see, no transition words. Yeah. No, they're embedded, they're subtle, they're there. They're just not, they're not prominent, but they don't have to be. So I think the author does a good job of, you know, I can follow this from paragraph to paragraph. I know where I'm at. I know what's happening. So I would say probably more specificity. So like Summer of 2018 or 17, like tell me, make a decision one way or the other. Cause it's like, I don't know, it was 8 or 9, it was 2018, 2017. I don't know. For me, it's like if the author is sort of waffling on something like that, then I'm like, like they don't. So just make a decision one way or the other on that one. But but it taught me a lesson I would have never thought about. Okay, so like good hook, good. The introductory paragraph is there. SeaWorld, rides, attractions, so we're good there. We drove for an hour, so we've got the setting, the characters, yeah, probably like a little more detail about why they were there, but the structure is fine. So you have an introductory paragraph, you have the concluding paragraph that talks about the life lesson. And then, she's got those 3 body paragraphs and even has some dialogue in there as well. So I would like to see some more elaboration. So like when you say, and I'm just going to go over this and then I'm going to move on. But this sentence right here, I'm going to talk about this because this is something that I see in student writing a lot. And it's something that seldom gets corrected. So, we could go on cool rides and see many amazing animals like dolphins, sea lions, penguins, sharks. There are also animal shows that include real live animals. So for this, like we could go, let's break this down. We could go on cool rides. Well, what does that mean? Like, what is a cool ride? We need to paint that a little more. We need to say what that is. So is it a roller coaster? Is it, is it one of those swings that whip out? Is it one of those like, I don't know what you call it, like the cyclone things, you know what I mean? Where you like put your back against the wall and it spins really fast and then the centrifugal force like paste you to the wall. Like what kind of ride is it? Like I want to know. So when you say a cool ride, that does not give me an image to work with. So tell me what that cool ride is, what it looks like, what it does. Amazing animals. Okay. Now you say amazing animal. I don't know what an amazing animal looks like or whatever. And the author goes into descriptions like the dolphins, the sea lions, the penguins, the sharks. We don't even need the etc. But amazing animals like dolphins, sea lions, penguins, sharks. Yeah, you could potentially get away with that. Amazing animals. Amazing is kind of a dead adjective there, but so is cool. So just tell me what that cool ride looks like. But I'll tell you one place where the author does a good job of that. Then while we were walking, I got distracted looking at a store with the dolphin souvenirs. All right. So rather than just say souvenirs or, some generic word, sort of puts dolphin in front of it, which dolphin souvenirs. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's like one of those little details that you may not think makes a difference, but it does. So, and then right here, after crying for about 5 seconds, my dad grabbed me by the hand and said, pay attention or you'll get lost. I was relieved to know that my parents were there and never leave my side. Okay. So we've got some dialogue there, which is perfect. I'd like to see a little more dialogue in there, but good work. Like I said, the structure is there. We're getting to the point collectively now where we need to start focusing on sentence and word level writing now, and like revision and editing. So I think we're all, or for the most part, most of us are pretty comfortable with the structure, which is good because that's a big part of the battle. If you can nail that, like you'll be in good shape. Okay. So to the author of this piece, good work. Yeah, there's, like I said, it's well structured. I would just be a little more specific about some of your word choice, maybe a little more descriptive in some spots, but it's there. So good work. Okay, it is 9:32. So I am going to set a timer. I'm going to give you some time to work exclusively on your essay. And I know I'm going to stop sharing my screen here in just a moment. And I know I'm going to look at my Go Guardian and see a good portion of my class anyway, either offline or not doing what we're supposed to be doing. But I guess that's my issue. But I'm going to set a timer and we're going to work until 10 o'clock. So that'll give us about 26 minutes altogether. So not a huge block of time, but it should be a healthy enough block to actually get some work done. So use this time wisely and I will be available. So if you have any questions, I'm not going to write it for you, but if you have any questions about structure or, you know, sort of the nature of the assignment, then that's fine. I will be available and ready for you. So that is where we're at. So I'm going to set a timer here in just a moment, and I'll put that timer up on the screen, and we'll go from there. So that would be 26. We'll say 26 minutes.
Really quickly too, if your iReady is telling you that you need to take the diagnostic, please do not do that. It's just an alert. We will let you know when it is time to do that, but ignore it for now. That's if you see that in your iReady, please.
There are some things that we repeat, and you will hear me do it over and over again. I will repeat, I will repeat, I will repeat. And we practice it. But there are other things that are very important that we're just going to do, like a lesson here and then a lesson there, and then hopefully, you know, it'll stick with you and you'll be able to think about it. The lesson we're going to do this morning is very, very simple. It's about the titles and the power that titles have when we read. Now, you all know this book, right? You all read it, right? Well, maybe, but this has a wonderful title, you know, Wonder. And this title right here gives us a clue as to what the book's about. And it also gives us a key that as we read, we may apply to what we're reading, and in doing that, we get more understanding about the problem, or more understanding about the main character, or more understanding about the plot itself. And in this book, Wonder, I want you to think about what this title means. We don't have time to go through all the book and show where it shows up, but what does it mean? You know, I wonder what this means. I wonder what I wonder, right? What this wonders, what this, forget that, just never mind. Anyways, so we go through. You should be reading books by yourself. And every time that you read a book, you know, we have this little handle that we put on a book. It's called the title, and it gives us a clue. Sometimes we only think that the titles are for those things so I can refer to it. It's a name of something, and it works that way. But titles are something more powerful than that. When I was in 4th grade, I read a series of books, and they were later turned into after-school specials or something like that. I don't know what they were called. But this book, I remember my dad coming into my room late at night, and it was like 2 in the morning, and I was reading this book because I was so enthralled with it. And it's this book. It's called Alvin's Secret Code. It's not very popular anymore. It's kind of different, but it was a whole series of books that were involved one character in particular, and he got into a problem over and over and over. Each book had a different problem. This book had to do with he was caught up in seeing a crime take place, and he found a clue and he started following that clue. This is a mystery, it's a genre, but Alvin's Secret Code is exactly what this book is about. He finds a code and he tries to decipher it, and it leads on a great adventure. Some titles tell us, it almost gives us a huge clue. Wander gives us a clue about the theme of the book and what its lesson is. Okay? This book does more than that. It tells us the main character and the conflict. Dogman, Brawl of the Wild. Okay? Some of you have read this, I'm sure. It's a current series that happens to be fairly popular with some of my students. And it tells the main character, and it also tells of the conflict. Now, sometimes it's hard to come up with a title. Mr. Hartman, I wanted to ask you a question, since you're our resident author and writer.
That's scary.
So, how many screenplays or creative pieces have you written, do you think, so far?
Oof.
In the last 10 years?
Like completed screenplays, I want to say 6.
Okay. And every time that you name one of these pieces of work that you have, do you ever change the title as time goes by?
I have. I mean, it's not unusual. Like sometimes, like something I'll go back and read, but it doesn't. Yeah. There's been times where I've been like, oh, like I'll go back and reread something, and oh yeah, I totally mistitled that.
When you've changed the title, what caused you to do that?
I just felt that there was like, usually for me, there was like a phrase within the screenplay or the essay or whatever that was like, oh, that's what this is really about. And so not like super direct or super, but it was like, yeah, that's like the essence of what I'm trying to like get to.
Okay, so when you entitle something that you write or you create, you're looking to get at the very, very heart of what that book is about, or what that screenplay is about, or what that story is about. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, some of our titles give us clues about the character, some gives us clues about the conflict, the problem, and some gives us clues about the general lesson that we're doing. We're going to read a story today, and we're going to practice some of the stuff, but I want you to think about the title. So I'm going to share with you my screen. Here is some pictures of something. I want to front load a little bit and just ask, you know, I want you to think, how many of you have ever done any rock climbing at all? Now, rock climbing can be done out in the wild. I see Raya has. Or it can be done inside a gym that has manufactured rock walls, which is just as fun and maybe even a little bit safer. Here's some pictures of people that are actually fairly close to us, not very far from us, and they're climbing rock faces, and some of them are quite tall. If you go to Yosemite, every time I've been to Yosemite anyways, I've seen this. There is always someone climbing El Capitan, which is a sheer rock face of some 3,000 plus feet straight up. In fact, most people have to take 2 days to do it. And so what they do is that they go halfway up, and then they have a little platform they are carrying on their back. They unfold it, they tie it to the wall, and they sleep there on the face of the wall. I would never do that, never. I don't like ladders. I don't do this, okay? So, I want us to watch a little video just to, again, to front load, to talk about how this sport, it's a sport that we don't usually think of. You don't see it in the Olympics. You don't see it on TV. But this is a video of a girl that's just a few years older than you, and she climbs like you would not believe. I'm not sure the video, the audio will come through, but you'll get to see her climbing.
Right after school, I just like try to like run to the gym so I can climb. It's a dangerous sport, but the only thing that I'm afraid of is not being able to get to the top. With climbing, I don't think that it really matters with how big you are. If you're smaller, you can hold on longer, and your hands might be smaller, so you can fit more fingers on holds. I started climbing in Central Park when I was 6 years old. Now I don't think I can like live without it. When you're close to the top of the climb you're trying to do, your forearms usually feel like they're gonna explode and they're gonna like burst open, and you feel like you have to let go. But with climbing, you just can't let go. I think that climbing it's obviously a sport, but it's also like a dance. You sort of have to be able to like flow up the wall and come up with your own techniques to get to the top. I think people are shocked if I do something that they can't do or something, because I'm still really young and I'm a girl. So like doing something that even if a guy can't do is pretty special.
Okay, when we watched this, did you notice what the title was? Yeah, well, sorry,
Right
I don't
after
want to
school,
redo this.
I just
Quit.
right after school.
Okay, we're going to read a story called The Cliffhanger. Okay, now, right at the beginning, we have our title, and I want you to pay attention to this. This title is it, because titles can be inferential or they can be explicit, right? Remember, explicit is that which is right up front, and inferential is that which is implicit, which is that which is kind of behind the text. Well, we read a blurb right at the beginning. It says, Andy was clinging with his bare hands to a rock wall, 100 feet below him. Boulders were scattered on the hard ground. So if this is called The Cliffhanger, what do you think the title is? Do you think it's explicit or do you think it's implicit? Is it inferential or is it right there in your face as you read it? Well, Andy was clinging with his bare hands. That's literal, isn't it? So this is an explicit title. It tells us exactly what is going to happen. Let's read it together. Don't worry, we'll make it to the top. Andy's voice was confident, but his heart was beating hard with fear. Andy was clinging with his bare hands to a rock wall. 100 feet below him, boulders were scattered on the hard ground. Andy blinked the sweat from his eyes and looked up. The edge of the cliff was about 10 feet above his head. It may as well have been a mile. Andy, Tierney, and Pat had been on an early morning hike through Yosemite National Park. The three friends were there on a camping trip with Andy's family. Andy's little brother, Ian, had made a pest of himself all morning long, begging to tag along with Andy and the others. "Take your brother with you," Andy's dad had said, as the campers cleaned up after their breakfast. "But Dad," Andy whined, "we're going to go exploring in the canyon. We can't have a little kid tag along when we go rock climbing." "Okay, I want you to look at this word right here. Wind, wind. And remember, when we come to a word we may not know, we're just practicing this. We read through it, we read around it. If we need to, we can break the word up, look at its parts. But then after we get a feel for what the word might mean, we add another word. We substitute into that place, into that word. But Dad, Andy whined. What word might we put here? Complain might be a word. But Dad, Andy complained, we're going to go exploring in the canyon. We can't have a little kid tag along when we go rock climbing. That's where you're wrong, Andy's mom chimed in. I don't want you kids climbing any rocks that are too steep for Ian to handle. And be back before 1, added Ian's dad. Show up later than that and you'll miss lunch. Now, lunch was the last thing on Andy's mind. The bright sunlight glinted off the faces of his watch as he inched his hand up the wall. He spied the watch's hands. It was 10 after 1. So much for lunch, Andy thought. Now, remember this week we've been looking at motivations the whole time. What is Andy's motivation? What do you think Andy is feeling as he's leaving camp? He's looking for adventure, isn't he? Then what is his motivation as he's hanging on the cliff? Is he even thinking about lunch? Hardly. What he's thinking about is safety, trying to overcome this problem of the wall. Half hour earlier, after spending the morning trooping across the hot sun-baked ground in the canyon, the 4 explorers found themselves more than halfway home. As they passed into the cool shadows under the cliff, Andy looked up. "Isn't that the tree that's about half-mile from our camp?" he asked, pointing to a tall pine towering over the edge of the cliff. "Great," Andy said. Sorry. I'm having technical difficulties. My screen went black for a second. Great, Andy said, we can save at least half an hour by climbing up the side of the wall instead of going all the way on the path. "No way," little Ian yelped as he stared up the cliff. "I wouldn't climb that wall with a ladder." "Don't be chicken," Andy said as he prepared the ropes for their climb. "I don't know," Tierney said, looking up the wall. "Ian may be right." "It's not so bad," Andy said. "Most of the way up, we'll barely have to use our hands. It's only the last 20 feet or so that it gets steep." "Those are the 20 feet that scares me," Pat said. By this time, Andy had slipped the rope through the device cinched into his belt, just as he had learned at the rock climbing gym back home. "Don't be afraid," he said. "This may be our only chance to do some real climbing. The walls in the gym are steeper, and we climb them, don't we?" Pat shrugged his shoulders. So did Tierney. A few minutes later, the 3 of them were roped together. Andy scrambled up the base of the cliff, followed by his friends. "Ian, you get on the end of the rope just like they taught you back at the gym," Andy said. I remember what they taught me, Ian said. They taught me never to climb without an adult. I'm practically an adult, Andy said, and I'm in charge. And I say, but it was too late. Ian had already trotted up the path, leaving 3 climbers behind. Andy, shouldn't we follow him? Tierney said. Ah, let the baby go, Andy said. He'll be the one to get in trouble for leaving the group, not us. 20 minutes later, Andy had changed his mind. Oh, anytime you see sentences like this, you should understand that there is a change of feeling, a change in motivation. They were the ones in trouble. As he had predicted, most of the climb had been easy. The last few feet, though, were much steeper than they had looked from below. I see a root, Andy called down to his friends. If I can reach it, I'll be able to pull us all up. Wait, Andy, Pat began as he strained to get a better grip. Andy didn't hear him. His attention was focused on the root. Andy's hands darted up and his feet scrambled up the side of the cliff wall. Pebbles and dirt rolled down the side of the cliff as Andy shot up the rocky surface. His fingers reached for the root and grabbed hold. Suddenly, Andy heard a cry and felt a mighty tug on his rope. He wrapped both hands around the root, holding on with all his strength. Andy looked down. Tierney barely hung on to the wall with one hand and a foot. Dangling below her, Pat swung on the end of his rope, whimpering in fear. I lost my grip, Pat whimpered, his feet kicking wildly. Just take it easy, Andy said as he hung onto the rope with all of his might. We'll be all right. Andy wondered how long he could hold on. He was about to cry for help at the top of his lungs when he felt himself lurch forward, downward. Dirt stung his eyes. Blinking, Andy looked up. The tree root was pulling out of the cliff wall. Soon it would give way completely, leaving nothing but the air between them and the sharp rocks 100 feet below. Now, remember when we talked about conflict? Mr. Hartman's talked about this. I've talked about this, but it's not just not one problem, but it's an intensification of the problem. More and more, the problem gets worse, doesn't it, as the story goes by. Here we have Andy taking a wild chance, grabbing onto a root, and things just pile up on them as they're climbing this. Pretty soon, the tree root is pulling out of the cliff. It's getting worse and worse. We call this escalation of the problem, of the conflict. Why do you think Andy tried to decide climbing the wall? Now, I want you to use your, use your whiteboards and your pens. But why do you think Andy decided to try climbing the wall? What was the challenge? What was the appeal? What was the motivation? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that exactly right now. And as you get an answer on your whiteboard, put it up. Make sure it's in a complete sentence. If you can do that, that would help. What is his motivation? Why did Andy want to climb the wall? I see people writing. But I haven't seen any answers yet. Why did Andy decide to try climbing the wall? What was his motivation? Aaron, can you get it closer? He wanted He wanted to what? I think next time I'll use the chat. He wanted to reach the top. I think that's a great answer, Ms. Hoskins. To prove that he could do it, I think that's a good guess. That's a good idea. There's something about the challenge, isn't there, about the challenge of climbing the wall that appeals to him, something of an adventure. He wanted to get to the top faster. Okay, good. Isabella? Now, what I want you to do next is make a prediction of how you think this story is going to end. Take a minute. I really want you to do this. I don't want 3 or 4 of you to do it like last time. I want you to think, how will the story end? We only have like 2 more paragraphs. And there's many different endings that could happen, right? How is this story going to end? Write it on your whiteboard. Let me see it. The clues are in the story that will help us. I think Ian went and got help and they were saved. Jaslyn, I think that's a good answer. Someone is going to get hurt. Kiara, that's what I think. I actually have not read the end of this yet on purpose. And they're going to get in trouble. They're going to get in more trouble, huh? It will end by Ian bringing over help and getting them saved. Aaron, that's not a bad answer. Bella, can you get it closer? Bella Chavez. They go all the way to the top. They overcome the obstacle. Boy, that's a classic ending, isn't it? I think Ian will come back with the adults. Well, let's see what happens, okay? Pat let out a scream as the root tore from the wall. Andy braced himself, expecting to drop through space when his downward motion jerked to a stop. The root was holding, but for how long? Just hold on, Andy said. He knew that holding on was not enough, not if the root was going to give way. If only he had something else to grab onto. He could pull them all to safety. Something hard clunked on Andy's head. Grab on, commanded a voice. Andy looked up. His father's face peered out from the edge of the cliff. A thick rope hung from the cliff past Andy's side. He reached out and grabbed it a split second before the root ripped from the wall and tumbled onto the rocks below. 2 minutes later, Andy, Pat, and Tierney flopped on the ground atop the cliff, panting with exhaustion and relief. Andy's mom and dad glared at their son, while Ian stood by with a smug smile on his face. What's the word smug mean? Last thing we're going to do with our whiteboards. Smug smile on his face. What do you think it means? Give me a word that can substitute for smug. One word, that's all I want to see. Grin. Good job, Rosalind. I'm waiting for your word. Let's see. Sinister. I really like that. Who is it that said that? Zanaya, good job, sinister. A sneer, yes, right, Alyssa. Those work. A dirty look. It's gonna feel like a dirty look. Devious, good, Mason, I like that one too. Okay. Andy's mom and dad glared at their son while Ian stood by with a smug smile on his face. It's a good thing Ian hurried back to camp, Andy's dad said. If you hadn't told me where you were, you'd all be lying in that canyon with broken bones, or worse. Okay, now, listen, when we take the title and we start using that as a clue for finding meaning in the story, sometimes the clue is about what the story, what happens in the story. It's about the plot. Other times, it's about the lesson. In this book, Wonder, right? It's all about the lesson. That's what the title is about. That every person, regardless of what they have to overcome or what they look like, is the wonder. And then if you read further, and then therefore we need to be kind to everybody would be the lesson. But in this story, Cliffhanger, the story is about the title is about what happens. Okay, hanging on a cliff, how are you going to get over the problem? Okay, well, today we don't have any new vocabulary, but you need to get it done. And we're about done with our time together, but Mrs. Bragg or Mrs. Digby has some announcements that we want to go over concerning, I believe, math, the con assignment.
Yeah.